You know that BG updated the audio engine, right? And you've probably noticed how some new reflections, undertones, aberrations appeared in rates. The most attentive ones have probably realized that binaural sound has actually been removed from the game. I got curious to check how the sound system works now. I ran a few tests to figure it out myself and show you. So, in this video you'll find out if we can still hear further with our front than our back. How does sound work in the sanatorium? Why are doors so OP now? And much more. Don't forget to subscribe, and let's go. Let's start with something simple. The animations for lying down and getting up have changed. From first person, it sounds very quiet. But what about third person? Let's take a look. Now it's almost unnoticeable, whereas before lying down was basically announcing the section to everyone. But that's not all. Crawling is also much quieter now, and the footsteps in the background stand out more. What about hearing from behind, from the side and from the front? In the last patch there was a feature where we heard much worse from behind and from the side, almost half the distance. Had this changed? And the answer is yes. I still think hearing from behind is slightly quieter, but the range hasn't been affected. What about the hearing range for running, walking and crouch walking? Let's have a person run and we'll measure how far we can hear. The distance is roughly around 40 to 42 meters, but it's clearly audible around 35 meters. And it doesn't really matter if they are running or walking, the volume changes, but not much. If you crouch and walk slowly, you'll notice that the PMC is practically inaudible. Is really very quiet. Will carrying extra weight affect this? In the case of running and walking, we can know that the range doesn't increase dramatically, but the volume and clarity of footsteps do. In the case of crouch walking, there's no difference. I even did a small experiment and turned around at the moment when I could barely hear the footsteps at all. And here's the distance at which this happened. During race, I noticed that the sound can differ significantly depending on where you are shooting, outside or inside building. So I decided to compare. Here's how Gunfire sounds with the headphones outside. And here's without headphones. Playing without active noise cancelling is just unbearable. The volume is off the charts. Here's Gunfire in a small room. And here's in a large room. I didn't notice any particular differences between the small and large rooms, but the echo does appear. And here's how spraying sounds from inside and outside a building. I didn't notice any differences in that regard. Another logical question is, what happens if you shoot while wearing a face shield? There's no active noise cancellation, so it could deafen you. But now we just get a quiet sound. Remember I said that the door is OP, and it's not just like that. Pay attention to how the closed and open door affects the muffling of sound. It even resembles some kind of realism, but it would only work like this if the door had good soundproofing. But Tarkov's doors don't seem very convincing. That's not all. We went to the sanatorium, where during the checks we noticed that the doors makes an extremely loud sound when opening and closing. You can even hear it from the roof when someone opens it on the first floor. But it doesn't work consistently and is kind of random. Also, the door has a chance to open louder or quieter, and this happens randomly. If you stand behind the door on the rooftop of the sanatorium and someone shoots, the sound is muffled. But if you go downstairs where another door is already open, the sound will be sharp again, because it comes from the street. In short, doors can really expose you, so keep that in mind. And additionally, when entering a building with some shooting in the background, you can tell whether the door leading to the shooting source is open or closed. But to catch these subtle details, you need to be really giga chat. By the way, doors muffle not only gunshots, but also things like running on metal, like in dorms. And this can really be used to determine whether a door is open or closed. Different guns with the larger or smaller calibers create different echo effects in a room. For example, this is how the PKP sounds. And here's the same M4. The PKP creates a bigger echo. Here's another double shot. Suppressed emptier. And here's a grenade explosion in a room and outside. Doesn't seem to have changed much. Have the headphones been reworked? I just took the worst ones like the GSSh and the best ones like the COMTAC 6. First I wore the GSSh and listened. Then the COMTAC 6. The main difference, as before, is in filtering out ambient sounds, which makes it easier to hear things. But the range differences aren't too critical, maybe a few meters. How's the sound between floors? Well, as usual, everything's messed up. For example, at the sanatorium there's not much difference between how far above or below you the enemy is. The sound gets muffled, but it's really hard to tell if the person is one floor above or two. Unless he climb up to the roof, then it's clear. But at the dorms is a completely different situation. When you are on the first floor, the sound gets cut almost in half on the second floor. And on the third floor, it's like 90% quieter. The same goes for when you are higher up. But you can hear the Christmas melody from below just fine. The interchange is completely broken. If the enemy in the center but higher than you, their gunfire sounds muffled, which shouldn't be the case. Sometimes you can't even hear someone above you at all. Back to the door. One interesting feature is how the sound doesn't gradually fade, but just switches to a muffled sound when you press to close the door. Another interesting moment. You've definitely encountered this, where gunfire turns into some kind of indistinct hum, as if a huge metal plate is shaking. This happens because if you stand close to some object like I did, this effect appears. What about positional audio and sound in general? As usual, it's bad. Buzz can appear without sound or approach without sound. And throughout the game I noticed how sometimes I just can't figure it out where the enemy is coming from or where they are at all. So maybe some things have gotten better, but not overall. The sound is different, sometimes more atmospheric, but it can be called good. As for small things, I can also note that the sound of loading ammo is still absent, but the sound of dropping a backpack is present. The range for hearing healing has increased. It used to be about 15 meters, now it's around 20. And now don't forget to subscribe. This video ends here. See you next time. Bye bye.